Good morning, everyone. I can see that most attendees have arrived, so we can start. My name is Konstantinos Stylianou. I'm the marketing manager at GCC. First of all, we would like to welcome you all to our first Dynatrace and Performance webinar. As we already aware, we are approaching to the end of another difficult year that was filled with uncertainty. But this also showed what can be achieved at speed and scale when businesses and society work together to tackle some of the toughest challenges. Forging the path forward requires focused leadership and broad collaboration, something we have seen in abundance from business during the past year. GCC's focus during the past year has been on deploying our technology capabilities to help clients respond, recover, and thrive, and enabling our professionals, of course, to stay healthy and perform at the highest levels possible. Businesses has risen to the challenge, but we have a long way to go, and that's why we're very excited to have on board Dynatrace and Performance, promoting innovative technologies and customer success through software intelligence, simplify cloud complexity, and accelerate digital transformation. We are in the era of digital services evolution, where most organizations are shifting from traditional on-premises data centers to multi-cloud environments, and alongside with Dynatrace and Performance, we focus to make it easier than ever for our customers to manage these demanding needs. During this webinar, you will find out why many of the world's largest enterprises trust Dynatrace to modernize and automate cloud operations, to release better software faster, and deliver unrivaled digital experiences. So, without further delays, our today's session is on the topic of Dynatrace Software Intelligence Platform, and we'll spend approximately 1.5 hours with our experts from Dynatrace that will guide you through this topic. Regarding the presentations, we have with us from Dynatrace, Mr. Ricardo Fontes, which is Regional Director for Middle East and North Africa, and Mr. Thomas Brandl, which is Sales Engineer for the EMEA region, to elaborate on who is Dynatrace and what are the characteristics of the Dynatrace platform through an insightful demo. Finally, it's a really honor to have with us Mr. Stegios Halamandaris from Alphabank Greece on a business case study, providing us with his insights on Dynatrace monitoring for mission critical application. During this webinar, you can ask, of course, any questions through the Q&A section. And at the end of the webinar, we will answer all the questions that you have been interested in. And of course, in the upcoming days, you will receive this recording as well. Enjoy it. And we are moving on to Mr. Dimitris Pistiolis, Product Manager at Performance Technologies.
Thank you, Konstantina. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dimitris Pistiolis from Performance Technologies Greece, as Konstantinos also mentioned. I would like first to thank you all for joining today's session, and I would like to begin by making a short introduction of who we are as Performance, so that you can understand the areas where we provide solutions for. Performance has been active for more than 25 years in the field of integrated IT solutions. It remains at its core a technology-intensive company, meaning that we are mainly composed as a company of engineers, which is a key factor for enabling us to focus on projects of high complexity. Historically, Performance introduced the virtualization technologies around virtualization in the Greek market. And we have a course of continuous growth all these last years, even in the times of economic crisis, and we managed to maintain ourselves, to continuously develop ourselves, and to modernize ourselves and our processes. And today we are one of the most powerful companies in the field of systems, being the only ones in the Greek market that maintain the direct contractual relations with all three major manufacturers: IBM, Dell EMC, HPE. At the same time, however, for several years now, we have added other solutions to our product palette in the field of enterprise software solutions, with partnerships with major manufacturers such as Dynatrace, which we'll present today, Micro Focus, SAS, ServiceNow, and others. Now, performance is based on 4 pillars, each of which maintains its own structure and its own team. But at the end of the day, all of them interact and cooperate so that we are able to offer what we call integrated solutions. More specifically, these pillars concern technologies around the cloud. So in the sense of cloud, a cross-cloud platform and hybrid cloud. In this field, we provide consulting and implementation services in the journey of cloud transformation. And we are supporting companies combine this transition with a literally transparent, simplified, and upgraded end-user experience. Dynatrace is a key enabler for us in this field, and it's a partnership that began back in 2018. We are the regional franchise operator for AKA master partner of Dynatrace for Greece and Cyprus. And in the market of Cyprus, we cooperate with GCC for expanding the business also in the Cyprus market. The second pillar is analytics. So whether it's IT or business analytics, solving problems, we have a business unit which currently employs more than 20 specialized engineers. And in this field, we help organizations better understand the wealth and the vast amount of the data that they possess, and to analyze and combine information out of independent, unrelated sources. A third pillar is workflow and cloud automation technologies, which cover either IT processes or business processes, where there are approval requirements and numerous flows. So enabling an organization to be more flexible and to increase its speed in the processing of the entire life cycle of any new requests or changes. Finally, we are our expertise is also solutions that concern the security of systems and ensure the operational continuity of an organization in general. We help customers understand how exposed their data are and at any time, but also identify the actions required to react with speed to business requests and to security incidents. That's pretty much it for what we do as performance. I would like now to pass it to Ricardo Fontes, the regional director for our region. Ricardo, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dimitris. First of all, thank you all for joining. It's a great pleasure to be able to present to you guys. And in the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to go through how Dynatrace can help or has been helping organizations transform faster and easier and even smarter in the current stage. As presented before, my name is Ricardo Fundo, I'm Regional Director for the Middle East, Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus region. And I hope next time we can meet face-to-face on a session like this, but currently, due to the current conditions, we can only do it online. And actually, this it's a great segue to the next slide, where organizations, as said before, are becoming much more digital. Obviously, to the current conditions, this is a obvious a must, but it was even started before that, as we all know. But of course, this digital transformation that organizations are going through, it's not only just a name, it's a process change, but underlying that process change, there is a technology change as well. Because organizations have to be much faster delivering the requirements, have to be much more concerned and aware of the experience of the end user, accessing those digital experience or digital channels. And because of that, many organizations are changing their backend stack to accommodate for that speed. And actually, that change is most organizations are moving into this cloud stack. And of course, that cloud could be a public cloud, leveraging the technologies as AWS, Azure, as we all know, but also private clouds as based on OpenShift, Kubernetes, or inside the enterprises. And 86% of organizations are actually using these technology stacks, like Kubernetes, microservices, containers, to leverage or to create speed on that digital transformation. But of course, with all of this, there's challenges that most of organizations are facing. And some of those challenges are these ones. Of course, things are much more dynamic because they are containerized, they are divided. What was before a monolithic system, now organizations are changing those systems into very small components and small items that, of course, are much more and which a much bigger scale. At the same time, the volume of data and velocity of data is increasingly dramatically, which of course bring challenges into the organization. And the third is the frequency of change. Organizations, being much more digital, have to deploy faster, providing the required functionalities to the end customers that are requesting them. And because of that, and at the same time, not only delivering those functionalities, but also correcting potential problems that they may impose into the system. This way, enabling the functionality to the end customer much faster. Of course, the fourth complexity here is that applications are a must, a very important subject, because that's the only channel that organizations interact with, or not only the only, but nowadays with the COVID, it's mostly only channel that many of the organizations are interacting with their customers. And last but not the least, resources don't increase in the same level of the components and containers of the ecosystem of the IT. Resources are actually limited and maintained as it was before 2 or 3 years ago, with some increments maybe. Of course, due to the challenges, organizations, when they're changing their IT landscape, we need to find ways, and most organizations have to find ways to cope and handle all these challenges. And the way to handle it, obviously, is increasing observability into the IT environment, understanding how the different components interact with the others, how is the end user performance, how data interacts and goes through the different components within the application landscape. And many organizations are changing the way that they approach that. And there is actually 3 ways that most of them are doing. One is keeping as is, which is obviously not an option, because if everything is much more faster, more complex, if they keep as they are in terms of being able to monitor that IT system, it will be impossible to cope with it. Of course, the second option is do it yourself. And do it yourself itself is using or leveraging open source tools, or even building your own way of observe that environment. And of course, that approach has multiple steps required. First of all, is many organizations are trying to gather data from multiple tools, commercial tools, some of them open source tools, but being able to gather data from the infrastructure, from the different components, from the Kubernetes systems or the cloud environments, and gather that information in somewhere, okay? And second, of course, getting that data somewhere in a repository that enables them to take some decisions. The third activity is to be able to organize that data, be able to understand how things interact with the others or how things depend on others. And of course, on a do-it-yourself capability or leveraging multiple tools, this has to be done manually. And of course, the fourth thing is that if we are gathering data, normalizing that data, and trying to understand how they relate, then we will have a lot of alerts into the system saying, let's say, end user experience is poor, or a system is breaking down, or whatever, or even more technical, a CPU of this machine is very high, or that memory is very high. And of course, all these thousands of events need to be suppressed to make sure that we only have, or we are only notified when actually a problem exists and actually is, affecting end users and and requires some activity from the IT operations team to resolve that. Okay. And the sixth problem is being able to scale, because as we said before, the environments are much more complex, with much more components, and the ability to be able to monitor all of that, the system, that do-it-yourself system, has to scale to that. And of course, last and not the least, on top of everything, is being able to drive that information to the right people, being able to create dashboards that actually are related to the operations team, to the development team, whatever, to the database teams and the different teams that need to be aware of how the environment is and take actions upon it. Of course, the problem of this process is that the time to be able to have this system available, and also the time that it takes for the organization to, every time there is a change on application, to have that system, let's call it, available and ready to monitor the new components, will definitely delay the flow and the speed of that innovation. So of course, that's also not an option. And the third option is leveraging a platform to do that. And that's obviously, I think it's not new. I'm talking about Dynatrace. And Dynatrace automates all these steps that otherwise would be manual or leveraging integrating technologies. And automates by gathering data automatically and adapting to the ecosystem automatically. Every time there is a change, a new version comes out, or components change in the system, Dynatrace is able to identify that change happened and start collecting data out of that new system or components that are running there. At the same time, we are able to understand how components interact with each other, okay, and how they relate with each other, okay. So this way, that information is pulled into a repository, of course, but at the same time, we are able to understand how components and an end user click interacts and exercises the different components through the backend, okay. And last but the fourth point is be able to reduce that noise as we are monitoring the end user experience. What is the experience of the end user using those digital channels? We have that visibility automatically of what is how many users are using those services, what are the current normal experience of those users. And this way, when a misbehavior happens within the IT systems, Dynatrace is able to automatically identify that there is a reduction or increase in terms of performance on a specific transaction. And this way, understanding how many people are being impacted, where they are coming from, and also at the same time understanding which components are part of that specific deliverable or that specific transaction. Okay. Dynatrace is fully web scale and scales from an enterprise. We have customers from small customers, startups, to some of the biggest customers worldwide. And of course, last but not least, Dynatrace has out-of-the-box dashboards and reporting engine that enables the different teams of the organization having the right information that requires for them. Okay, but all of that automated with an AI at the core that is continuously looking at the behavior and adapting to the system. And when misbehavior happens, being able to identify what is the business impact of that misbehavior and what is the root cause of that misbehavior. This way, routing that information into the right teams to identify the right problems. And of course, this can be done and used in all application lifecycle, from development to the operations, and of course, to the business teams that require to give feedback into the teams. And this actually is like a joke, but it's the difference between having a lot of components glued together, trying to find ways to get a result out of it, and having a full automated technology all in one in a single platform. And Dynatrace is exactly that. Dynatrace starts, as we said, at the core, being able to not only capture information, technical information from traces, from metrics, from logs, but from topology, behavior, code, and everything. And on top of it, we have the intelligence part, which is our Davis AIs. And the Davis AI is looking at every deviation and normalization on the different components, and then delivering information up from infrastructure perspective, from application and services, microservices, performance, from application security, and the recent events, as I'm sure you all know, related to the Java, shows an example of that, and Thomas will go through it a little bit. To digital experience, providing feedback to the business analytics information, feedback into the business teams with that information, how many people, with what type of people, and what is the performance of those digital channels. And of course, cloud automation to be able to cope with those. And again, this cloud automation is private or public clouds. And of course, enterprise itself, because nothing in the IT world works alone. And even if you are leveraging, let's say, Kubernetes as a private cloud, your backend for sure will be enterprise old stuff. Let's call it this way. But Dynatrace can cope for all of it, and it is really all of it. We support more than almost 600 technologies on the different landscape. And it's totally out of the box, meaning Dynatrace is deployed, and Dynatrace will by himself identify which different technology is being used on which different component and adapt to that change automatically, with no need for configuration, no need for you having to know exactly what you need to deploy depending on the application, because many times you will have your own developed applications, but many times you will have applications that have been delivered by your vendors that many times you don't know exactly what is deployed there. This way, Dynatrace simplifies all of that. And as said before, Dynatrace delivers value to the different stakeholders, from development teams, helping them evaluate what is the quality of their applications in their lifecycle, even if they are fully DevOps, which by the way, Dynatrace as a company, we are fully DevOps. We release major releases every second week, and internally we have releases built for every alpha day. And for each build, Dynatrace is being used to analyze what is the difference between that build and the previous build, to compare in terms of performance, technical metrics, information, and so on. This enabling our teams, and of course our customers that use Dynatrace in the same way, to be much more faster to be able to deliver those functionalities. And of course, to do the operations team, increasing efficiency in the operations team, not only giving full visibility on those services, but also creating that speed to mid time to repair, to understanding what is the business impact, and then what is the root cause, what they should do, and what they should change in the IT system to make sure that they go back to ready state. And also from a business outcomes, because as I said before, as we are giving that full visibility in terms of end user usage of the different services, with that you can do everything. You can understand what type of functionalities are being used. Let's say if your company is promoting a specific functionality, a specific product, you can track how many users are actually interacting with that new product or new functionality, and what is the experience from their side, and how they flow, meaning if they, let's say if it's a product, or let's say from a financial services, a new account or a new card, from a retail, a new product that is selling, understanding if users are accessing those, and then what is the flow out of it? Did they bought? Did they go for it or not, in terms of conversions into that specific product? All of that in one single platform that every single person within the organization knows and is able to interact with, and provides value on the specific level to all of them. Okay, so in summary, high level, this is Dynatrace, and I'm going to pass to Thomas to go in more detail how we provide that information in the technology. Thomas, go ahead. Thomas, you are muted.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. That's one of the problems about the pandemic, right? So we always have to deal with technology. So thanks for having me today. My name is Thomas Brandl. I'm Ricardo's technical counterpart. I'm actually working from here in Austria, where also our main R&D headquarters are located. And as such, I'm always happy to present you the latest developments in Dynatrace and all the different kind of things that we and our engineers, so we by now have a team of over 1,000 engineers here in Austria that are always working on the Dynatrace platform, have created, and I want to present you today a couple of these things. So first of all, we have already seen a lot of different slides around the Dynatrace platform and how it can be leveraged. But really, I want to show you like a little bit of insight about how Dynatrace works and what it really looks like. So first of all, I'm pretty sure every one of you has been working with a monitoring tool one way or the other before. It has at least seen how those kind of things actually work. Typically, what you have is this kind of dashboards like I have here on my screen. And of course, we have those kind of dashboards in Dynatrace as well. You typically get to see some kind of warning lights, something turns red, then all of a sudden when something turns red, people need to analyze those different kind of things. They might want to look at some spikes in some charts when there are some errors or things like that. But in reality, the only thing that you care about is always the same. You want to know, is there actually some problem in my environment or not? And is this something that I should really care about? So what Dynatrace provides you with is Davis, our artificial intelligence engine for understanding whether there are any kind of problems going on at the moment. And what I can see here on my screen straight away is that I have here one problem which is currently going on. And actually, over the past 24 hours, there were many different kind of problems. And some of them might have been less critical, but some of them are also like more important. So I'll just open up one of them here, where I can see that there is some kind of problem in this particular area. And what I can actually see in here is that there is a problem in my application. It's called easytravel.com. And in this particular application, I can see that the current response time has actually exceeded what we typically see by almost 200%. So what's important here to understand is that this normal kind of behavior, this auto-detected baseline here is 506 milliseconds. That's not something that you need to configure, but that's actually something that Dynatrace automatically looks into, and it always determines the actual behavior of your application. So whenever something like that happens, Dynatrace will automatically figure out, okay, what's actually going on in that environment and what is the root cause of this particular problem. And to actually understand what the root cause is, Dynatrace actually provides us with something which is called the visual resolution path. So what I can do in this case is that I can just replay a problem as it occurred. And actually what I get to see here is actually this problem itself doesn't consist of a single event, but there are actually many, many different events in different parts of the application. So if I look at this, I can see that there is my application, which is called easytravel.com. There is actually some web servers that are impacted, and all of these are actually having different kind of problems. So I can see that there is a service which is slowing down. I can see that some HTML elements are not found where they should be. I can see, yeah, that there is some impact on the infrastructure, that there is some CPU saturation, as I can see here. And that's actually something very typical that we get to see everywhere. Whenever you have a problem, it's not like a single thing that is alerting you, but typically it's many, many different kind of components which might be impacted by such a problem. And that's probably also what you have seen in your traditional monitoring solutions, that whenever a problem happens, that many, many different teams are getting alerted, that you actually need to convene in some kind of war room to actually understand what the problem here was and how to actually resolve this particular problem again. In Dynatrace, however, we have identified that all these different kind of ongoing events in these different components are actually related to the same kind of component. So we don't actually need to bring these war rooms together to understand that this is actually the same problem and this is the root cause, but this is already where Dynatrace helps us to understand what's really going on in my environment. So if I just go back into my problem once again that I had there, I can actually see that the root cause of my problem here has already been detected. Or I see that I picked a different problem now, but eventually it's the same thing. So the root cause of this whole problem here is that there was a response time degradation on the check destination service. And what Dynatrace now allows me to do is that I can directly dive into what has been going on there. So I can just analyze this kind of response time degradation. And I'm just going in here. I can see that there have been no interaction of that particular service, of this check destination service, with any other kind of services or queues. There was no database usage. But really what has become slower is actually the code execution time. So if I drill further, I can actually see on a code level what has been going on there. So I can straight away see like where the hotspots are, and from a developer's point of view, I can then immediately see, okay, well, there is some problem here in this particular point in code here. There is a location parser, and actually this location parser here, this has some kind of problem. So it's taking like 98.8% of the time. So that's something where my developers can now work on and actually try to fix this particular issue. However, Dynatrace has detected much more than that as well. So if I just check on this particular check destination service again, I can just analyze the response time of this service itself. So you can see already before it has been verifying. Now, after this whole occurrence happened here, then the response time has become much, much slower than what we have seen before. So really, this kind of analysis that I would have had to do manually using some dashboards has been automated by Dynatrace as well for me to just understand what the problem here is, and I don't need to actually dig any further here in order to find the root cause of that kind of problem. So that's great from a developer's point of view, but also from an operations point of view, I just want to make sure that whenever I have a problem like this, I just want to get back to a state as it should be as quickly as possible. So for that, let me show you another problem. So let's pick this one here. And in this case here, what I can see is additionally to that response time degradation, I can also see that there is some integration made with ServiceNow. And we use the integration with ServiceNow to actually understand what kind of deployments have been made during that time frame. And what I can see here is that straight at the time that this issue here occurred, also a deployment change has happened. And this one was done using ServiceNow. And actually there was some kind of change on this particular service, on the check destination service, which has caused this whole thing to become much slower than what it used to be before. So what's the most natural thing in such a case if you want to get your working, your system working to run as quickly as possible? Well, of course, it's to just automate things and roll back to the latest version of that system that was known to be working before as quickly as possible. And that's exactly what happened here. So what we have also provided here as part of our integration was a remediation action. And in this remediation action, we actually mentioned, okay, well, there is this problem here that some service was deployed, but in case it doesn't work, please just execute this remediation action to just roll back to the latest known version. And we have used our integration with Ansible Tower now to actually roll back and get this service to work again as quickly as possible. And if I look at this whole problem here, it actually was only open for 27 minutes, and there was no actual interaction from someone human with this whole system. But rather than that, the whole system has just rolled back to the last known version as soon as possible. And that's why everything's green here already again. So there is no problem anymore, but already Dynatrace, using the integrations with ServiceNow and with Ansible Tower, has rolled back to the last known working state. Nevertheless, of course, during those 30 minutes, some issues might have occurred. And that's one of the great things that I can also see. I can always see for any kind of time frame, whenever some users were using my application, I can also see the behavior of those users and how they have been using my application and whether they were actually affected by those kind of problems. So I can see that during this time frame of this problem, some users were using my easytravel.com application. And now, of course, since I know this information, who these users are, I can proactively reach out to those customers, tell them, hey, I'm sorry we messed up. Our system wasn't working during the time that you were using it. Here is a 10% discount voucher. Please come back to us and we will make sure that this time it actually works. So that's a great thing, right? Another thing is I can actually have a look at the behavior of those users. So I can actually see for this user Maria here, well, there was this kind of booking that she tried to make. Actually, it was for 2,400 euros, so it's quite an important user for me. And I can actually see how this user was traversing through my application. And I can actually see, okay, well, this user has actually been able to finish to the booking, so that's a great thing. So I probably don't need to actually reach out to this particular user, but nevertheless, I would need to make sure that other users are still happy. One more thing, even further than that, rather than just looking at, okay, how users have actually passed through my application, is that I can also do something which is called session replay on those user sessions. So what I can do, for example, is if I just take a different time frame of the last 24 hours, let's actually refresh this and check for the application type mobile. Then I can actually see some mobile application users who have been having a frustrating experience using my application. And rather than just checking on how they were using my application from like the different kind of pages that they were traversing to, I can actually do a visual kind of replay about how this user actually experienced my application. So I can actually see that this user here was using a mobile application version of my EasyTurl application. Dynatrace automatically takes care about masking any kind of critical information like passwords and so on. But also Dynatrace will record any kind of crashes in my application. And what I can see here in this case was that there was a crash in my application, and I can see that also the user has just been entering some kind of special character before this crash happened. So that's very, very critical information again, because how often have you had a case where you actually had to reach out to a customer and ask them, okay, how did you actually crash this thing? Or what did you do before this problem happened? And they said, well, I don't know, it just happened. So with this kind of visual replay, you can now immediately get to see what actually led to a crash of your applications. And of course, once one of these crashes happened, then you can also view like all the different kind of technical informations to actually solve these kind of crashes. So that way we have already covered some of the modules of Dynatrace. So we have seen already the kind of AIOps part of Dynatrace. We have already seen like our APM parts as well. One thing that I also wanted to mention is that whenever anything happens in Dynatrace, so let's say a user actually clicks on some element on the screen, then we actually record all this information, and even to a detail that we can actually see whatever has been going on the server side. So in this case here, we can see that Greta has been loading this page /current, and whenever she has been loading this page, it seems that this is actually calling this kind of page here on the server side. We can also see like if some kind of images were loaded and stuff like that, so that might also impact like the performance. But in this case, it's really just this one page here on the server side that has been loaded. And I can even drill down as far as I can see like each individual execution of this function here on the server side. So I can see, okay, well, this has been going through my EasyTurl web server, and this has been calling some other kind of Node.js service, and so on and so forth. And that goes down to even like a database level and things like that. I can even like capture different kind of attributes for that user, like this kind of information about what they have been looking for in my application here. Okay, so coming back to that problem, we have already assessed the impact of this particular kind of problem here, and we have seen that this deployment actually has made a big impact. But rather than just having an impact on performance, we can of course also detect all other different kind of issues that might happen around my application. So one of them might be an infrastructure related issue. So even if I check on my check destination service, I can actually see the kind of infrastructure that is running this, like all the different kind of hosts that are hosting this particular application. And I can see, okay, well, during this problem time frame, I can also see like there is some kind of CPU saturation. So the amount of CPU has gone up way above what we usually see at that time frame. So it's not only about the application itself that we monitor, but we also monitor the infrastructure around that application at any point in time. So how does that actually work? So figuring out all these kind of problems doesn't require a lot of configuration, as you might be used to from all the different kind of tooling out there that you have been using before. Rather than that, the only thing that you need to do is actually installing one small component, which is called the Dynatrace One agent. And to install the Dynatrace One agent is a very, very simple task. So for example, if I want to install the Dynatrace One agent on Linux, then I just need to execute those 3 lines of code here on the command line, and automatically Dynatrace will observe whatever is going on there in my application. So the way that this actually works is, and for that I'll just quickly share to my slides. So once you install this one agent, it will automatically discover whatever is going on there in your application. So that might be a Kubernetes cluster, that might be a traditional application that is using Linux, Windows, and stuff like that. But it can be any kind of thing like that. And actually, because of the simplicity of the deployment of the one agent, this can be done in a very, very short amount of time. So for example, just last year, we had a case where a customer of ours, a large insurance company based out of the US, has instrumented 18,500 servers in just 3.5 hours. So that's the kind of speed that we are talking about here. And once you have installed this one agent, what will happen is that automatically this one agent will gather all the relevant information around it, which is called the pure path. So the pure path is this kind of end-to-end trace around all the different kind of technologies at scale. And this pure path captures many, many different kind of things. It captures the user behavior, as we have seen. It captures the code level, or the tracing, how things are actually behaving between the different layers, the different kind of metrics and logs that are actually affected by this whole thing. Also some metadata, like the different kind of versions of libraries that we are seeing. And last but not least, it's also capturing topology. And by topology, we are actually talking about this internally as our smartscape. So our smartscape is a kind of real-time configuration management database that is based out of these pure paths. And the smartscape actually gives us a full model to understand, okay, how your different kind of components in your application are actually interacting with each other. And based out of the smartscape, we can then apply our Davis AI assistant to actually understand what the different kind of paths are in there that lead to a certain problem. And once a problem is detected, then of course we can use our integration with other tools to automate the problem remediation and get the system going as soon as possible again. Speaking of integrations, of course, we are integrating with all the different kind of tooling that you might already have, either as part of your DevOps pipeline, or that might also be part of your ITSM services that you are using. So this way, Dynatrace is hyperscale. We always automatically adopt to changes, understand what's going on there, and we can actually help you in automating everything around your application. Speaking of automation, one of the big problems that we have been seeing for all the different kind of organizations around the world over the last couple of days was that there was a huge, massive vulnerability discovered in one of the components that is very, very core to most of the Java applications around the world, which is called Log4j. And whenever it comes to understanding vulnerabilities, typically what customers have been doing was they were actually employing things like web application firewalls to understand, okay, what kind of traffic is coming there and try to block it, which has been kind of unsuccessful for most of our customers these days because this attack is just so complex and can be done in so many ways. At the same time, they were also trying to just do some kind of scanning of different kind of container images and things like that to just understand, okay, what has been going on there. And nowadays, pretty much everyone is actually affected by this, this kind of vulnerability. So even if I check my own little small projects that I'm also monitoring with Dynatrace, I can actually see that over the past 72 hours, I can see many different attempts to actually exploit this kind of Log4j vulnerability as well, because I can see that people were trying to just get my system to log this kind of problematic output. So now this kind of container scanning always has a problem because it only happens like periodically and not immediately at the time that such an issue is discovered. So Dynatrace, as I told you before, is actually always continuously monitoring what kind of code is actually deployed in my environment. And that's a great thing because this way I can actually at any point in time discover what kind of vulnerabilities this kind of code might have. And of course, this kind of Log4j issue is the most critical one that we have discovered in recent times. And you know, this has been discovered on Friday, and straight away you can see on Friday at 12:10, Dynatrace has also immediately detected the same kind of issue as well in my environment because I'm actually using Log4j. So I don't need to wait for any kind of scans to happen, but this is immediately getting to my attention in Dynatrace because Dynatrace knows the kind of code that is deployed in my application. So whenever something like that happens, it is a lot of work. And you have a lot of work to do to actually get this whole thing going again. So in order to prioritize, you need to know a couple of things. First of all, is this something that is actually available from the internet? And Dynatrace immediately figures that out. So because we have all this topology information, we can actually see that there is one exposed process which is actually reachable from the internet. And that is probably the one that I need to focus most on because, yeah, this is a process that is available through a public network. And also at the same time, Dynatrace has analyzed that also some sensitive data assets, so typically databases, are within range. So that means this Tomcat here is probably the very first thing that I should actually focus on fixing and getting this whole problem here solved. At the same point in time, of course, there are also some other affected processes, but at least these other affected processes that I can see here, so I can see all of them, of course, but at least they are not really reachable from the internet. So that's a good thing. So I can actually focus on this Tomcat here first, which is both reachable from the internet and also has access to some sensitive data. I can then later prioritize on those ones that have access to sensitive data. And then, of course, eventually I need to fix everything, but at least this way I can prioritize where the different kind of areas of are that I should actually focus on. So that's a great thing. Just understanding this kind of things in real time is very important. And the reason why this is so important is actually Well, on Friday, we have heard about this Log4j vulnerability. But if I just check out this thing here, if I just check the first thing here, by the time that this has happened, of course, people have tried to figure out more things about Log4j as well. And in the meantime, already 2 other issues have been detected here in Log4j. So there's another remote code execution here, which is not as critical as the original one, and another denial of service here, which is having a low score, but nevertheless, this kind of things happen straight away, and you just cannot afford to wait for the next security scan to happen to actually understand where these different kind of components are being used in your application. So Dynatrace actually helps you in prioritizing these and figuring out where these different kind of components are actually used. Because eventually, whenever these kind of things happen, then, well, this kind of old-fashioned tools where you just did some scanning, they might have worked in traditional environments. But nowadays, you might have this kind of components packaged inside other components. They might be part of containers and things like that. So that's where I believe having a complete security scanning done all the time in real time with Dynatrace is very, very critical as well. Coming back to this vulnerability screen once more, maybe some of you haven't been aware of this, but there has also been a very critical issue in Log4j before already, and that was open for like the last 200 days. This is also 9.8. But what's important about this one here is there are only certain vulnerable functions around this. And what Dynatrace actually does is at any point in time, it actually checks, okay, is your code actually using one of these vulnerable functions? And if it's not, then even though this is a very, very critical issue, this is not affecting your application at all. So again, helping you in actually understanding any kind of security problems and prioritizing whenever they occur. Of course, you can also use all the other different kind of functionalities of Dynatrace in order to figure out any kind of security problems. Like, for example, examining logs. Because again, whenever I examine the logs and just search here for like JNDI, for example, which is one of the very typical things here, then yeah, as you see, I can already see some people trying to actually exploit this kind of vulnerability in my code. So with using the logs, with just understanding all different kind of problems, with also understanding whenever any kind of requests are made to public networks, and that's also something that Dynatrace can do, we can actually help you with actually figuring out about any kind of problems, whether they are security related or whether it's a performance or technical problem at any point in time straight away. So with that, actually you can then focus on your digital business. And what Dynatrace also allows you to do is actually analyzing all the different kind of data that we are capturing and gathering business data out of this. So for example, for my application here again, that's a typically travel-based application, I can figure out, okay, what are my most important pages? So like I can see that Paris obviously is one of the most viewed pages here. So that's maybe something that is interesting for me. I can also see like how people are traversing through my application and whether they're actually able to finish to the payment page. I can also see like how much revenue I have made over the last 2 hours, and that way I can also see, okay, are there any kind of business errors that might have caused any kind of problems for me? All of this can be done using the kind of data that I actually get from the Dynatrace platform to actually make sure that I can get the best outcomes for the business possible. So one last thing that I wanted to share before we actually get to see a case study from a real customer of ours, from Alphabank, and I'm really looking forward to that, is how can you actually use this whole thing? So well, there are two different ways of how you can use Dynatrace. So there is our Dynatrace Software as a Service offering, which allows you to just have all the data in the Dynatrace cloud. And really the only thing that you need to install on your premises is the Dynatrace One agent. However, of course, we understand that your data is very critical, and some of you might be working in like financial services and areas where it's just not possible for regulatory reasons to use a cloud-based offering. And for that one, we also offer a different kind of deployment method, which is called Dynatrace Managed. And with Dynatrace Managed, you can also use Dynatrace on your premises. Everything, all the data stays on your premises and you don't need to worry. But still, at the same time, you get all this kind of automatic updates and everything from Dynatrace straight away through a component which is called Mission Control. And we have seen how important it is to actually get automatic updates over the last couple of days, because, you know, like everyone I talk about what they have been doing over the weekend, they tell me, okay, well, they have been working on this Log4j vulnerability. So rather than you having to worry about this kind of things, we actually employ you with the tooling, with these automatic updates to actually make sure that whenever any kind of problems happen, that you get to solve them as quickly as possible. Okay, and that's it for my part of the presentation. So I'm handing over and we will talk about any kind of questions later on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. I would like to introduce our next presenter, which is Stelios Kalamandaris from Alphabank. Stelios is head of business services and user interfaces software at Alphabank. Alphabank is one of our biggest customers in Greece. Throughout this partnership, since 2018, we have deployed multiple projects in the application monitoring field with Dynatrace in the biggest banks in Greece, covering their e-banking and core banking systems, in telcos, in insurance companies, in the biggest retailer in Greece. But today we have one of our customers. I think it's best to hear right from the source what's the value of the Dynatrace platform in a day-to-day business. Stelios, the stage is yours.
Hello, my name is Stelios Kalamandaris. Can you see me? Can you hear me? There was a power out.
Yes, of course, of course.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I will show you the presentation, and I will close my camera in order not to have a better bandwidth. Give me a minute. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, of course.
Okay. My name is Stelios Kalamandaris, as Dimitris already told you. I am head of business services and user interface division of Alphabank's application management sector. I will show you how Alphabank is using Dynatrace in order to monitor the core banking application, the core banking system. Before moving to that, I will make a brief introduction of Alphabank core banking system. A few years ago, Alphabank decided to modernize its legacy core banking application in order to make it more flexible and more extensible. In this journey, the bank decided to remove all the banking services logic from the old legacy mainframe systems and move it to a new platform that will be the target architecture for all the future implementations of the bank. Since then, the first deployment was done back in 2018, starting with an application provided to the branch channel officers, with hosting some services about related to customers. Since then, the CBS application, the CBS platform is enriched with more than 2,000 banking operations used by several clients, except for the branch running in the application running in the main channel of the bank, which is the branch. There is this application is separated to 3 layers. The front layer, which we call UFE, and it is the front layer provided to the officers. A layer hosting the branch logic application, and an ESB, a service layer that hosting the banking services that are reused from several clients, even from branch channel or from other applications like web banking, CDI or CMART applications. The roadmap of CBS is in the next few years to host other applications rather than the branch channel. For example, there's a new project running to implement the new web banking platform of the bank, which will be implemented on the CBS platform. Let me give you some numbers in order to understand the workload and the size of this platform. CBS is serving more than 3 million requests per day. In the peak times of the day, CBS serves up to 25 transactions per second. And when I say transactions, I mean bank transactions that actually commit the change to the backend systems. That means that I exclude the inquiry requests. The average workload is approximately 1 to 1.5 million transactions per day. So far, CBS hosts up to 50 channel APIs, 80 middleware services providing thousands of operations, and 100 long-running business processes. The implementation of these services involves about 3 million lines of C# line of codes, 5 million Java lines of code, and 500,000 Cobol lines of code in the mainframe systems. This is the high-level architecture of CBS. You can see the front the front-end layer, including the authentication component, the channel layer, and the middleware, whose boundaries include caching and business process management engine. And the little Dynatrace logo in the upper right corner of the shaded boxes indicates the components that are monitored by Dynatrace. There's a number of monitoring challenges that arise from what we already described. CBS has a multi-layer architecture implemented with a blend of technologies and provides high throughput of transactions. Also, the application architecture that I already described requires an equally complex system architecture. So the monitoring should provide a common view of both application and system aspects. And the application and system department of the bank that supports the platform should have a common view and a common language of communication. The operation of the system is highly critical, so there should be early notification for early manufacturing and an analysis that would assist us to keep to quick problem resolution. Apart from that, there's a continuous need to define custom metrics and KPIs. If I wanted to point out the highlights of the Dynatrace value for CBS, I would mention the short-time deployment that was mentioned already, meaning that the Dynatrace can be easily deployed to the application without requiring any code changes. The excellent alerting and notification capabilities based on an engine that is self-trained or can be easily customized. Early alerting helps us to act before the problem is escalated and has a negative impact on the business, while Dynatrace offers traceability and root cause analysis that help us to detect and resolve the issues in a very short time. Also, we are using Dynatrace to monitor the evolution of system performance. When we initially deployed Dynatrace to test environment, our concern was to test the Dynatrace upgrade before applying them to production. But finally, Dynatrace ended up as a tool for bug resolution and performance optimization during the UAT phase. The bank was so content with the use of Dynatrace in CBS that proceeded to further use of Dynatrace to other critical applications like Alpha Web Banking. I will show you some cases related to Alpha Web Banking monitoring. Let me proceed with the cases that will show you better how Dynatrace help us to support the production of this mission critical application. This screen shows an error message that the end user gets when a technical error occurs. This user is an officer in a branch. The officer gets the screenshot, creates a ticket with the error details, and the ticket is assigned to CBS production support team. As you can see here, in the red cycle, there is a request ID, which is a unique ID of the request that caused the error. The production supports navigates to the unified front end to the UFA service on Dynatrace, filters the request with the request ID, which was which is defined as a request attribute, and finds the execution path of the specific request. Request attributes are key value pairs that are associated with a particular service request. The value of the request attribute can be a field of the request data and can be extracted with a number of ways provided by Dynatrace. In this case, the request ID is, as I told you before, is a UUID that we generate in the front end for each user action and is sent within the request payload to the back end. So we filter the requests using the request attribute, and we saw the execution path, which is the pure path that was described before here, of the specific request. The red mark on the left side shows the error, which is in this case it was an error with on the communication with an external system, and actually it was a certificate that has expired. The second case is how Dynatrace alerting capabilities help us to prevent serious problems on production. This is a customization we are using to monitor the utilization of the connection pool of JBoss servers with a database, in order to be alerted when the connection pool is about to be exhausted and act proactively, for example, increasing the pool size. In fact, this is an old implementation because now Dynatrace provides built-in connection pool metrics for JBoss. This is how we define an alert. In this case, the max size of the pool size is 50, so we raise an alert when the value of this metric exceeds the value of 48. And this is an email notification that we got a few months before that says that this metric exceeded the threshold that we set, 48, and its value was 49. In this case, we increased the pool size of the specific connection pool. The next case is about an infrastructure issue, and shows that even though we installed Dynatrace agents in our application servers virtual machines, Dynatrace extends the monitoring to the underlying vCenter infrastructure. This is an example of an alert about a network issue related to VMware installation. The last case, it's not about CBS application. It is a case that I borrowed from Alpha Web Banking, and more specifically, it's a dashboard implemented to monitor the operation of SMS and Viber notifications that are sent to web banking users during the execution of transaction. These messages can be informational or are used to send the OTP, the one-time password, to clients that are not using the mobile app push notification. The service is critical not only for the execution of web banking transactions, but malfunction of this service could have a bad impact to the bank's reputation. For example, in case we are spamming the users with wasted messages, could cause a very serious problem to the reputation of the bank. Through this dashboard, which is available in a wide LED screen in the operator's room, they monitor the status of the service. It would be very nice if I could show you how this monitor turns red when an error occurs, but fortunately everything works so fine that I couldn't find the malfunction in the historical data returned in Dynatrace. To close my presentation, I would like to show you that Dynatrace is one of the key tools we are using to the migration of CBS to a cloud infrastructure. Right now, there's a major project in progress that we're running, moving the CBS from the old VM infrastructure to a new infrastructure, the private cloud infrastructure on Red Hat OpenShift. We do this migration gradually, meaning that some layers are already on OpenShift and some layers are running on the old infrastructure. In these slides, you can see a request executing a request execution through CBS layers that are running in the new cloud and the old cloud infrastructure. The front end and the channel layers are running in the OpenShift cluster, while the middleware layer is still running on the old VM servers. As you can see, we have a common view of the execution path in both infrastructures, and the old one and the new one. That is from my side.
Thank you, Stegio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stegio. I see that we had some questions that have already been answered in the Q&A section, but there are some that needs to be answered if Dynatrace team was to step up for that.
Sure, of course. So one of the questions around Dynatrace here was around monitoring of mainframes. And there are a couple of different kind of mainframes, of course, out there. So where we have full support is for IBM Z mainframes. So there we can actually monitor everything. There has also been a question around AS400 infrastructure, which also is sometimes known as IBM I-Series. So for IBM I-Series, we have a limited set of functionality, but we also support some monitoring of IBM AS400 infrastructure as well. Similar to that, also we had some other questions around the different kind of supported platforms. So one thing that was very important, and I believe you should also reiterate it to the bigger round, was how you can actually get Dynatrace to work in your environment. And I just want to mention this once again. So you don't need to actually change anything in your code or anything like that, but it's really just about installing a single component, this Dynatrace One agent, and that will automatically make everything work for you without any kind of code changes. And that supports, yeah, of course, this kind of traditional environments, even the mainframe environments, and also because one of the questions there was also around web apps, functions, cloud platforms. Yes, of course, we support those as well. So we do have support for example, for Azure, Azure App Service, for Google apps, for all the different kind of serverless functions as well. So like, for example, if you are using AWS Lambda, for example, then we can also support that. So pretty much any kind of service is actually working with Dynatrace. And yeah, so we pretty much support all of these different kind of platforms. Maybe if you're interested in this one as well, I'm just sharing one link here, which is dynatrace.com/hub. So I'm sharing my screen for this as well. So on dynatrace.com/hub, and I will paste this in the chat as well, you can actually get to see all the different kind of supported technologies in Dynatrace. So for example, if I search here for iSeries, then I can see, okay, there is this extension for AS400 and for the iSeries monitoring. And similar way also, if I say search for app service, for example, then I can see, okay, there's Azure App Service supported. And pretty much any kind of technology you can actually search for here, and we will give you information about it, whether it's actually supported in our platform. Another question, yeah?
Yes, yes. I was just I didn't know if you were looking into this chat, but the other question was, is it a cloud solution or on premises? And as Thomas presented a little bit, so Dynatrace is offered as a software as a service, where in our case our data center is actually AWS, and and also we are starting with Azure as an option also, but as a software as a service, we manage the Dynatrace cluster server side, let's say, but we also offer the same exactly product, and the product is exactly the same product on what we call managed. And the managed is an on-premise basis that all the cluster, Dynatrace cluster or servers are on customer premises. And as I said before, as Dynatrace is a full DevOps organization and we release versions every 2 weeks, to assure compatibility to new technologies that are coming in, problems, bugs, and everything. Everything is delivered every second week, every 2 weeks. The Dynatrace managed service connects into our mission control, which is where it gets license verification and also software updates for maintaining the Dynatrace cluster. But all the data captured by Dynatrace in the managed implementation is kept on premises. Okay. The other question was, what is the license scheme? And Dynatrace has a very simple license method, and Dynatrace is licensed based on the backend and the front end. Let's call it. The backend is based on as Thomas referred to, the one agent is deployed on the different machines. And that agent will identify the size of that machine, and the size is based on memory size. And depending on that size, it will consume a license based on it. Okay. The second parameter of licensing is the end user experience and how many visits per year it consumes or it is captured. Those are the two major items for licensing. Of course, Dynatrace is sold as a subscription, and multiple times as a 3-year subscription. I think we have someone with his hands up.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, this is Spiros from Bank of Cyprus. The question, I asked the question about the licensing scheme. My next question would be, you referred to memory size. So what's one license? Let's say an 8 gigabyte server,
it's 16.
Server?
16. So 16. if the server or the component has 16 gigabytes of memory, it will consume 1 unit. If it has 8, it will consume half a unit. If it has
so you do sub
correct
sub licensing, let's say
8, 4, and less than 1 if it's microservices, or 16, 32, and so on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. No other questions?
Yeah, it seems that all the questions have been answered, or in the Q&A section, or through the microphone right now. So if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to contact us in the next couple of days, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. As we mentioned at the beginning, in the upcoming days, you will receive also a recording of this webinar. Wrapping up today's event, would like to thank you all for your participation. Of course, special thanks to Dynatrace team, performance, and of course Alphabank for their presentations and participation. I would like to wish you a happy holiday season, healthy and prosperous new year. Again, thank you all. Have a great day and great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.